This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Hit the notification bell, please, so you never miss an episode. The Epstein story keeps getting worse, not just for Trump and Republicans, but for the Clintons and leaders throughout Europe, including the Prime Minister of Great Britain. While here in the United States, the top-down message is it's over, move on. Countries like England and France are going where Pam Bondi refuses to. They're almost sending a message to America. Unlike you, Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, we will hold our people accountable. We will conduct our own investigations into Jeffrey Epstein if the United States will not. In England, the latest Epstein file dump has touched Prime Minister Keir Starmer, with some calling for him to step down after new revelations about his decision to appoint Lord Peter Mandelson, an Epstein confidant, as ambassador to the United States. There are reports Mandelson might have shared government memos regarding the financial crisis with Jeffrey Epstein back in 2009. A police investigation is underway, and police may also be opening up an investigation into Andrew Mountbatten, the former prince, the former Duke of York, who is now accused of sharing top-secret memos with Epstein while Andrew served as his nation's trade ambassador. Reuters reporting new emails found in the latest Epstein dump show Andrew handing over to Epstein official trade documents back in 2010 at the height of the financial crisis. Prince William dislikes his Uncle Andrew and has been lobbying King Charles, and he succeeded last week in convincing the king to throw Andrew out of the Royal Lodge, a 30-room mansion bequeathed to the former Duke of York by his mother, Queen Elizabeth. For the first time since Andrew has been linked to Epstein, the future King and Queen of England released an official statement saying the recent revelations about their Uncle Andrew leaves them deeply concerned. This is a major departure from a royal family that has remained somewhat tight-lipped when it comes to Andrew's lascivious behavior. Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer last week said he believes Andrew should go to Washington and testify before the same House Oversight Committee Ghislaine Maxwell was pleading the fifth to on Monday. More on her testimony in a second. I'll go over how greatly Europe and England's response to the latest tranche of Epstein documents, how it differs from the response here in America. Members of Congress have reportedly begun looking at the unredacted portions of the Epstein files. They began on Monday looking at it. The Epstein Files Transparency Act was signed into law on November 19th of last year. It gave the Department of Justice exactly 1 month to turn over everything, including statements given to the FBI by witnesses and Jeffrey Epstein's victims. Survivors and some members of Congress are claiming there are 3 million documents still not turned over, including those statements given by victims and witnesses to the FBI. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who previously served as Donald Trump's criminal defense attorney, was charged with releasing these files on January 30th. He claimed, that's it, case closed. And you're not seeing any more files. There's no hidden tranche that we're keeping from you. Really? Well, what about statements from witnesses and Epstein's victims? The case is closed, so you're free to release those statements. In fact, you've already gotten permission from the victims. Why won't the FBI tell us what the victims told the FBI back in 2019 when the DOJ decided to prosecute Jeffrey Epstein? The survivors released a video on Super Bowl Sunday sponsored by World Without Exploitation, and in their 40-second video, they singled out Attorney General Pam Bondi with tape over their mouths, symbolizing all the redactions in the Epstein files. The victim said Pam Bondi knows the truth and she should release the remaining 3 million files. Right after becoming Attorney General, Pam Bondi promised to release the Epstein files in their entirety. And on February 27th of last year, she invited 15 MAGA influencers to the White House, gave them binders filled with what she promised was just phase one in a series of Epstein files releases. She said the Trump administration will be the most transparent Oval Office in American history. When those 15 MAGA influencers went through what White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles later described as binders of nothingness, they were infuriated, and so was MAGA World. And then on July 7th of last year, MAGA World full-on revolted after Pam Bondi and the darlings of MAGA World, FBI Director Kash Patel and his sidekick, Deputy Director Dan Bongino, declared, "Story's over, move along, nothing to see here. Epstein committed suicide, no client list, case closed, and we're not releasing the files." So the Epstein Transparency Act was passed in November because of that, and Democrats are accusing the Justice Department of redacting, withholding, and accidentally releasing the names of victims, while at the same time making sure to cover up the names of Epstein's co-conspirators. The one individual who could shed light on all this is Ghislaine Maxwell. She is currently serving a 20-year prison sentence for helping Epstein traffic minors for sex. Ghislaine Maxwell testified behind closed doors via teleremote. She testified before the House Oversight Committee on Monday, and as expected, she pleaded the fifth. Immediately after her testimony, Maxwell's attorney, David Oscar Marcus, issued a statement saying the only person who can tell the unvarnished truth about Epstein is his client, Ghislaine Maxwell. But he added she will not say anything until Donald Trump gives her clemency. Marcus concluded his statement with the following words: "Only she, Ghislaine Maxwell, can provide the complete account. Some may not like what they hear, but the truth matters. For example, both President Trump and President Clinton are innocent of any wrongdoing. Ms. Maxwell alone can explain why, and the public is entitled to that explanation," unquote. Right. She wants clemency from Trump. And she's saying Trump and Clinton are innocent of any wrongdoing. What a coincidence that she would be saying that. California House Democrat Robert Garcia is the ranking member on the House Oversight Committee. After Maxwell's testimony, Garcia said she offered nothing, and he demanded to know what she's hiding and who the men are who trafficked and raped girls, men she's trying to protect. Garcia has repeatedly criticized the Department of Justice for giving Maxwell special treatment, transferring her last year to a minimum security prison in Texas after she met with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and pretty much told Todd Blanche everything Donald Trump wanted to hear. As far as Maxwell is concerned, she's getting special treatment in that she's the only one being punished for Epstein's crimes. Nobody else. Maxwell is angling for some sort of clemency from Trump. She remains the only Epstein associate to be put on trial here in the United States, despite Maxwell reportedly saying nearly 25 of Jeffrey Epstein's closest associates made some kind of sweetheart deal to avoid prosecution. We know from a recently released 86-page internal memo drafted by prosecutors on December 19th, 2019, in the lead up to Maxwell's conviction, we know from that memo, written after Epstein died, that the feds were looking to prosecute 4, possibly 10 co-conspirators. Who were they? They only ended up prosecuting Ghislaine Maxwell. Who were the other 10 co-conspirators? Again, all this was happening during Trump's first presidency. According to the New York Times, Trump is mentioned in at least 5,300 documents in the Epstein files that were released at the end of January. The New Republic reporting that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, again, he previously served as Trump's criminal defense attorney. Now he's releasing the Epstein files. He said when releasing them that Trump didn't commit any crimes because it's not illegal to hang out with Jeffrey Epstein. Really? It's not illegal to see a crime and not report it? The White House insists Trump's been completely exonerated by the files, that nobody has accused him of anything in those files. Simply not true. There is the accusation by one woman who claims when she was 14, Trump forced her into oral copulation. There are other accusations involving Trump and girls. California House Democrat Ro Khanna, who co-authored the Epstein Transparency Act, says there are open-ended questions regarding Trump's relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Khanna wants to know what kind of arrangement was made for Maxwell not to implicate him and then get put in that minimum security prison in Texas. He wants to know, did Trump ever discuss a pardon or clemency for Ghislaine Maxwell? Did he ever discuss this with her lawyers? Seems like a reasonable ask. Let me pose this hypothetical about clemency for Ghislaine Maxwell. Should the midterms turn into a massive blue wave, Trump becomes a lame duck, and he no longer entertains the idea of running for a third term. Honestly, how shocked would anyone be if, on his way out the door, Trump pardoned Maxwell? Would you be shocked? I'd be shocked if he didn't. Meanwhile, Kentucky House Republican Thomas Massie, who co-authored the Epstein Transparency Act with California House Democrat Ro Khanna, is now calling on Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick to resign. It just gets worse for Howard Lutnick. Lutnick, who quit his job as CEO of the Wall Street trading firm Cantor Fitzgerald to serve in the White House as Commerce Secretary, was a neighbor of Epstein's in Manhattan. Lutnick insisted last year when he was nominated for Commerce Secretary that he severed all ties with Epstein in 2005. He told the New York Post that he visited Epstein's mansion in New York and he was so disgusted, he said, "I decided, quote, I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again," unquote. That, he claims, was 2005. But then Lutnick's name showed up in late January's Epstein dump. Turns out that despite insisting he broke off ties with Epstein in 2005, in 2012, I guess that would be 7 years later, he and his wife Allison were making plans to visit Epstein on Epstein's private island. The files also show that Lutnick was having drinks with Epstein in 2011, even though Lutnick claimed he was done with Epstein in 2005. Horrifyingly cloying messages to Epstein from Lutnick's wife Allison, arranging for two families, the Lutnicks and one other, to visit Epstein's island in December of 2012. Lutnick said he cut off relations with Epstein in 2005. Lutnick, according to these 2012 emails, brought 6 boys and 2 girls between the ages of 7 and 16 to come play on Jeffrey Epstein's private island. And if that isn't bad enough, CBS News continued to plow through the files and discovered that Howard Lutnick and Jeffrey Epstein in 2012, 7 years after Lutnick insisted he broke off relations, were part of a 10-person syndicate investing in Adfin, an internet advertising firm that has since gone out of business. So what is our Commerce Secretary's response? Well, he took a call from the New York Times after the revelations about his trip to the island came to light. Before slamming the phone down angrily, Lutnick told the New York Times, quote, "I spent zero time with him," unquote. After CBS News reported that Lutnick went into business with Jeffrey Epstein in 2012, 7 years after our Commerce Secretary, Lutnick claims he broke off ties with Jeffrey Epstein. A spokesperson for Howard Lutnick issued a statement saying, quote, "This is a failing attempt by the legacy media, CBS News, to distract from the administration's accomplishments," unquote. What accomplishments? What accomplishments other than getting things named after Donald Trump? Well, as I mentioned earlier, Ghislaine Maxwell testified remotely before the House Oversight Committee Monday and refused to answer any questions, taking the fifth. The Democrats want answers about her relationship with Donald Trump. Republicans obviously want to know about Ghislaine Maxwell's relationship with former President Bill Clinton, but there's a slight difference here. Bill Clinton has been president since January of 2001. Donald Trump, last time I checked, is president. Now, that being said, there probably are some questions for Bill that need answering. The New York Times out with a scathing review of the Epstein files, showing that Ghislaine Maxwell played a major role in the launch of the Clinton Global Initiative, one of Clinton's first post-presidency projects to create an annual summit of billionaires to help solve the world's problems. Yes, the people who create the problems are going to solve them? I don't think so. Bill Clinton became president in January of 1993. Within a month, visitors' logs show Jeffrey Epstein visiting the Clinton White House by himself, sometimes with Maxwell, but mostly by himself. We now know through visitors' logs that during the first 2 years of Bill Clinton's presidency, Jeffrey Epstein visited the White House at least 17 times. That doesn't necessarily mean he was meeting with Bill Clinton. Who was he meeting with? Bob Rubin? A legitimate question to be asked is, why would Bill Clinton, when he's president of the United States, need anything from Jeffrey Epstein? Once Clinton is out of office, it's a reasonable supposition that he's a naif when it comes to finance and could use some advice from Epstein on how to fundraise. That I get. But why is he hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein during his presidency? What did Epstein have to offer the most powerful man in the world, the President of the United States? What could Epstein offer that Clinton's top advisors couldn't provide? According to Danny Hackham's piece in the New York Times, Ghislaine Maxwell played a pivotal role in the launch of the Clinton Global Initiative. This was about 3 years after he left office. Ghislaine Maxwell cut a $1 million check to the public relations firm that produced the opening night gala for the Clinton Global Initiative. The Times points out that Maxwell's involvement with the Clinton Global Initiative was 2 years before Epstein was indicted for soliciting an underage prostitute down in Florida. He ended up serving more than a year. During her deposition with Todd Blanche last year, according to the Times article, Ghislaine Maxwell said Bill Clinton was her friend, not Jeffrey Epstein's. And yet Jeffrey Epstein, according to the visitor's log, visited the White House several times by himself to see Bill Clinton. The Times points out that in fewer than 2 years after leaving the Oval Office, Clinton flew on Epstein's jet, along with Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, Kevin Spacey, and Chris Tucker, on a 10-day tour of 7 African countries. Bill Clinton is no longer president, and there have been no accusations made against him in the Epstein files, unlike Donald Trump. There are charges of forced oral copulation, for example, made against Donald Trump. The House Oversight Committee subpoenaed the Clintons to testify. At first, the Clintons fought it, calling it a kangaroo court. The committee immediately voted to recommend holding the Clintons in contempt of Congress. So it was about to go before the full House to be voted on whether or not to hold the Clintons in contempt of Congress. And if the full House voted to hold the Clintons in contempt, then Attorney General Pam Bondi would be free to prosecute the Clintons for contempt, the same way Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro were in contempt of Congress for refusing to testify before the January 6th committee, and they went to prison. Both of them did time, like 3 or 4 months in 2024 for contempt of Congress. It rarely happens, but you can be certain that if the Clintons didn't testify, Pam Bondi would prosecute them for contempt of Congress. So the Clintons folded. They agreed to testify. The Clintons want the testimony to be televised so nobody can distort what they say. That's not going to happen. Their testimony will be fully transcribed, however, and videotaped, much like Jack Smith's testimony. It was behind closed doors, but to the House Judiciary Committee's credit, they did make the transcripts and the video public afterwards. Hillary Clinton is scheduled to testify behind closed doors on February 26, and then Bill goes before the committee 24 hours later. Famed linguist and leftist tribune Noam Chomsky also appears in the Epstein files. Besides a photograph of Chomsky on board Epstein's private jet, there are also a series of email exchanges in which Chomsky offers advice on how Epstein can burnish his reputation. One email is dated 2019, the year of Epstein's arrest and death. Epstein solicited advice from Noam Chomsky, asking, "Should I ignore the bad press I'm getting?" This after a series of exposés in the Miami Herald entitled "Perversion of Justice" exposed the sweetheart deal Epstein made with the Department of Justice to avoid prosecution back in 2006. Remember that? Acosta, who was labor secretary under Donald Trump, was the federal prosecutor who made the deal not to prosecute Epstein the first time. And who was Epstein's attorneys that made the deal? Alan Dershowitz and Ken Starr, the Whitewater prosecutor, was representing Jeffrey Epstein. Chomsky advised Epstein in 2019 to ignore the media. Noam Chomsky told Epstein that Epstein was being treated horribly by the press and that there is an hysteria surrounding the abuse of women. This is Noam Chomsky. Chomsky wrote that even questioning a charge made against a man is tantamount to committing an act of murder. He wrote that in 2019. That would be 2 years after white people discovered the Me Too movement. Me Too movement was invented by black women, I think 20 years before 2017. Valeria Chomsky, Noam Chomsky's wife and spokesperson, issued a statement last week saying that Epstein's email requesting advice was a form of manipulation and that Noam Chomsky had, quote, made the grave mistake of trusting Epstein and not fully researching the charges made against him. Chomsky is 97 and has not been in good health. And Epstein's a predator. He insinuates himself into everybody's life. If you read the Epstein files, he doesn't just use sex and young women. He approaches people like Noam Chomsky, appealing to their intellect. That's what a predator does. He code switches. If he thinks you're a degenerate, he shows you women. If you're an intellectual like Noam Chomsky, he talks linguistics and the soul. That's what predators do. And they compartmentalize. It is conceivable that somebody could actually be around Jeffrey Epstein and not see anything, because that's what predators do. They know how to cover their tracks. The FBI and the Justice Department still insist the investigation is over. It's over. That's what Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche are saying. They also concluded the holy grail of an Epstein client list doesn't exist. So what they're saying is, what they want us to believe is that Jeffrey Epstein only procured girls for himself. He never placed powerful men in compromising situations in order to blackmail them. And what they want us to believe is that Jeffrey Epstein was a monster, but he drew the line when it came to providing minors to rich and powerful men. He was a monster, but he would never think of putting rich and powerful men in compromising positions. What the Department of Justice wants us to believe is that everyone surrounding Jeffrey Epstein, except Ghislaine Maxwell, everyone else was not complicit. Nobody helped Jeffrey Epstein except for Ghislaine Maxwell. That's what Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche want you to believe. Case closed, they say. No more files. The Justice Department is done. We're done. Now, Trump keeps banking on this story getting eclipsed by something shinier and way more innocuous. Innocuous, well, for him, something way more innocuous, at least for him. He is the master at controlling news cycles. But Epstein just won't go away. In fact, if you are a longtime listener to my show, I have kind of said it's not important. I mean, it's important, but it's not going to bring Trump down. That's what I kept saying. I said, let's dig in there, find things so it embarrasses Trump. But I didn't think it would stay around the way it has. Trump has done everything to make it go away. In the past month, he attacked Venezuela, threatened to attack Greenland, waged war on the streets of Minneapolis and St. Paul. He's threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act, nationalize our elections. The Epstein story, it won't go away. So it's going to get worse. Something interesting is happening right now. Trump has done nothing but spit in the face of Europe. And with the Epstein files, Europe now seems to be spitting back, sending this message to Trump and Pam Bondi: if you're not going to prosecute anyone, we will. Great Britain right now is convulsing over the latest Epstein revelations. Monday began with Prime Minister Keir Starmer's future in doubt, all thanks to his decision to appoint Epstein's friend, Lord Peter Mandelson, as ambassador to the United States. Starmer's cabinet on Monday ended up showing support for him, especially after a closed-door meeting. Anas Sarwar, he's the leader of the Scottish Labour Party, is the only big Labour Party leader calling for Starmer to step down. Sarwar serves in the Scottish Parliament. I don't believe he serves in England's Parliament. Leave a comment and let me know. But I don't think he serves in England's Parliament. I think he serves in the Scottish Parliament. He's the only Labour leader calling for Starmer to step aside. There's been major bloodletting inside 10 Downing Street. Lord Peter Mandelson was forced to quit the Labour Party last week as more emails and photographs surfaced. Photographs and emails showing Mandelson was much closer to Epstein than he let on. Mandelson is really important inside the Labour Party. New documents show Epstein paying Mandelson as much as £75,000 20 years ago. Mandelson can't remember getting the money. New documents show that Epstein was paying medical bills for Mandelson's husband, and now the police are reportedly looking into the possibility that Mandelson, while serving as the de facto deputy prime minister under Gordon Brown, Mandelson shared with Epstein a secret government memo written in 2009. In the memo, it talks about Gordon Brown thinking of selling off 20 billion pounds in government assets. Metropolitan Police have now launched an investigation into why Lord Peter Mandelson would be sharing a top secret memo giving Jeffrey Epstein a heads up on Gordon Brown, the prime minister, selling off 20 billion pounds of government assets. If guilty, Lord Peter Mandelson could be sentenced to life in prison for sharing market-sensitive government information. Mandelson was appointed ambassador to the United States in December of 2024. He was fired on September 11th of last year as more evidence of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein surfaced. So this is really what's happening in the United States is far different from how Great Britain is reacting. Maurice Glassman is a labor leader who sits in the House of Lords. Glassman appeared on Sky TV Monday and said before Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of England, Great Britain appointed Mandelson as ambassador to the United States, Maurice Glassman says he wrote a memo advising against it, saying that Mandelson's ties to Jeffrey Epstein will come back to bite him, the Labour Party, and Keir Starmer in the ass. Glassman said he was ignored. And now Keir Starmer's chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney, stepped down on Sunday. McSweeney took full responsibility for advising Starmer to appoint Mandelson as ambassador to the United States and said it was wrong, damaging to the country and his party, adding the honorable thing for him to do is resign. Nothing like this is going on in the United States. Monday, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, announced he was resigning, saying it was time for the Prime Minister to rebuild. All this as police say they are investigating Andrew Mountbatten, the former prince, former Duke of York, after emails surfaced inside the Epstein files showing that Andrew also may have violated Great Britain's Official Secrets Act by forwarding to Epstein a confidential briefing on investment opportunities in Afghanistan's Helmand province. He wrote this, he forwarded it in 2010 as Great Britain was pouring money into the rebuilding of Afghanistan at the height of the financial crisis. 2010 is when Andrew says he broke off relations with Epstein. He's sending one memo the same year on investment opportunities. Other memos have surfaced with Andrew sharing briefs on trade relations in Southeast Asia. After 2010, these memos forwarded to Epstein, all after Andrew said he broke off ties with the pedophile, but asked for money for himself and his wife. King Charles issued a statement on Monday after reports emerged that Andrew may have violated the State Secrets Act that carries a sentence of life in prison. King Charles said he will be more than willing to assist the Thames Valley Police in their investigation. Mona Juul was Norway's ambassador to Jordan. She resigned after it was revealed right before his death that Epstein left $10 million in his will to her two children. She stepped down. There's an investigation. France's National Financial Prosecutor's Office has launched an investigation into 86-year-old Jack Lang, who served nearly 10 years as France's Minister of Culture. Newly surfaced documents in the Epstein files show Lang's name appearing nearly 700 times over a period of about 7 years leading up to Epstein's death, Lang and his daughter communicated with Epstein, asking for favors, money, business opportunities. Lang's grandchildren were also reportedly left millions in Jeffrey Epstein's will. On Friday, Lang resigned as president of the Arab World Institute. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, no relationship. Polish Prime Minister, I love that name. He's a good guy. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk announced his government would be launching an investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's ties to Vladimir Putin and Russian intelligence. They want to determine if Polish minors, young girls, were trafficked by Epstein and Russian intelligence operatives to entrap world leaders in compromising positions that could then be used as blackmail. During his cabinet meeting, Polish Prime Minister Tusk said the nearly 1,000 mentions of Vladimir Putin in the Epstein files and 9,000 mentions of Russia suggest Epstein and Putin, or at least Putin's associates, had created, quote, a classic KGB-style honey trap to lure powerful men into sex with underage girls, and that information could then be used to manipulate these powerful men. But Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche say, no client list, no blackmail. He was a monster, but he drew the line on blackmailing powerful individuals. And nobody can explain how Epstein had the money he had. Over the weekend, Donald Trump posted on social media a video of Michelle and Barack Obama looking like apes. That's a racist trope dating back to our nation's founding, in order to dehumanize black people and justify their subjugation. Trump eventually took the video down but refused to apologize. See the difference between what's going on in Great Britain and what's going on here in the United States? House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who could become America's first black speaker should Democrats win back the House of Representatives in November, he responded to Trump's social media post by telling reporters, F Donald Trump. And he said the F word. They're going, Schumer and Jeffries are saying the F word. Louisiana Republican Senator Bill Cassidy is a medical doctor. He issued the following statement to thank Trump for removing that post. How far gone are you to write this? Thank you to President Trump for taking down the post about the Obamas. He, Trump, made significant inroads with his outreach in the African American community, which we need to continue. His post sent the wrong message despite how it may have been originally intended. We know how it was originally intended, and what outreach has he made to the African American community other than persecuting the Somali community? This is unbridled racism against black people. But Cassidy is a senator from Louisiana. Well, ABC News reporting that Donald Trump told Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer that Trump would free up $16 billion to finish the Gateway Hudson Tunnel project, linking New Jersey and New York underneath the Hudson River, if Schumer would agree to rename Dulles Airport and Penn Station after Trump. Schumer refused. The money has been frozen since October of last year. The Wall Street Journal reporting U.S. District Judge Jeanette A. Vargas of the Southern District of New York granted a temporary restraining order that was requested by New York and New Jersey for Trump to unfreeze the funds so the project can continue. The judge then lifted her order until 5 p.m. Thursday, so Trump can appeal her ruling before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. Trump wants Dulles and Penn Station named after him. And now the New York Times is reporting that Trump is pressuring the Smithsonian to create a new exhibit honoring the president, listing all his accomplishments. Name one. Name one accomplishment other than what? Getting things named after him? Last month, the Smithsonian Institution's National Portrait Gallery caved into pressure and removed the label next to Trump's official portrait. The label had referenced his 2 impeachments. Trump was able to get that removed. Last year, the National Museum of American History's exhibit on impeachments was altered to add the word alleged in describing the circumstances surrounding Trump's 2 trials before the Senate. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries on Sunday said Trump's plan to nationalize the elections is another way of saying, I plan to steal the midterms. In an interview with Dan Bongino, he was the deputy FBI director. He resigned. Who knows what happened? He's gone back to his podcast. Trump appeared on it, and Trump said this was last week, Trump said it was time for the federal government to run elections in 15 states. Gee, I wonder how those states voted in the 2024 presidential election. During the podcast, Trump seemed to suggest that the Department of Justice and ICE, his personal police force, should be monitoring polling stations in those 15 states that have, he claimed, a history of rigging elections. This all coincides with a series of letters Pam Bondi is sending to blue states demanding voter information so that she can prove election fraud. Immediately after the execution of Alex Preddy, Bondi delivered a letter to Minnesota's governor, Minnesota's Secretary of State, and the Attorney General demanding they turn over voter rolls, voter information, assist me in my investigation into voter fraud in Minnesota. She said, right after the day Alex Preddy was executed, she said, the 3,000 federal agents rounding up your residence, those agents will leave if you would just assist in my voter fraud investigation. Trump has seized the voting records from Fulton County, Georgia, did that last week, to prove the election in Georgia was stolen from him back in 2020. He has enlisted Bondi to investigate blue states in order to call into question any losses Republicans might suffer in November's midterms and to rewrite history, claiming the 2020 election was stolen from him. Trump told Bongino, I won Minnesota 3 times, but it's a rigged state. Really rigged badly. Georgia Democrat Senator Raphael Warnock said of Trump's plan to nationalize the elections, these are maneuvers of an authoritarian desperate to cling on to power. Virginia Democrat Senator Tim Kaine said Trump's ego can't handle the fact that he lost in 2020. Steve Bannon on his show called on Trump not only to nationalize the elections, but order in the military and ICE to make sure the midterms aren't stolen. The Wall Street Journal reporting that Trump's plan to keep the House of Representatives Republican by gerrymandering, well, it isn't working the way he hoped. Last week, the Supreme Court refused to hear a challenge to California's Prop 50, which passed overwhelmingly in November, and it authorizes the democratically controlled state legislature to create 5 new reliably blue congressional districts that would cancel out the 5 reliably red ones created in Texas. In November, Virginia Democrats significantly expanded their majority in the House of Delegates making it possible for them to follow through with plans to carve out more reliably blue congressional districts in Virginia, possibly turning 10 out of the 11 House members who go to Virginia House members Democrat. 10 out of 11 members of the House of Representatives from Virginia could end up becoming Democrats. This new map would likely flip reliably red districts blue. 3 seats held by Virginia Republicans Rob Whitman, they're on the left, Jen Kiggins in the center, and John McGuire on the right would most likely end up turning blue. Again, 10 of Virginia's 11 congressional seats could end up being Democrat. Virginia voters will be asked to weigh in on approving this new map in April unless the courts intervene. But as we've talked about, this is partisan gerrymandering, which the Roberts Court says they have no problem with. Texas Senator Ted Cruz calling Virginia's plan for a new map, quote, a brazen abuse of power. He asked, why is it fair that only 52% of Virginia voted for Kamala Harris, but now Democrats are going to end up with 91% of the state's congressional delegation? He goes, how is that fair? Texas State Senator Louise Lucas responded to Cruz's lament by taking to Twitter and saying, you all started it and we effing finished it. But she used the F word. Well, they did start it. It started in Texas. It started in Texas. Remember, Democrats just need to flip 3 seats and they get control of the House of Representatives. In the midterms for Trump's first administration, they flipped 56 seats. Now they only need to flip 3. I think it's 56, something like 56. They only need 3. Nevada House Republican Mark Amodei announced he is quitting Congress. He is now the 51st member of the House of Representatives to announce he will not be running for re-election. During an interview with NBC News on Super Bowl Sunday, Trump said, this is my economy, not Joe Biden's, and I'm very proud of how it's going. According to The Independent, 90% of Americans say inflation is at a crisis level, that it's a crisis. The Wall Street Journal reporting that despite Trump's promise to bring back manufacturing through tariffs, not working. The Journal writes, tariffs on imports were supposed to create a golden age of manufacturing. They haven't worked so far. How bad is it? The Journal, Wall Street Journal, reporting manufacturing was down 2.1% for all of 2025. The Federal Reserve says manufacturing jobs are moving to India and Vietnam because of Trump's tariffs. And the Federal Reserve says these jobs, these manufacturing jobs, won't be returning to the United States anytime soon. Meanwhile, Donald Trump said he wasn't going to watch Bad Bunny's Super Bowl performance, but apparently he watched enough to say it was absolutely terrible, one of the worst ever. Just pure racism, pure racism. During his performance, Bad Bunny handed his Grammy to a 5-year-old in a nod to Liam Ramos. Liam Ramos, the 5-year-old Ecuadorian national, pulled off the streets of Minnesota by ICE and then shipped to a detention center in Texas. Liam was returned last week along with his father. 5 students from Liam Ramos's school have been rounded up and detained by ICE. CBS News got its hands on a secret internal Department of Homeland Security memo showing that fewer than 14% of those arrested by ICE in 2025 had violent criminal records. I think CBS, that's an actual headline. It shouldn't be that fewer than 14% of those arrested, not less than 14%. Somebody speak to Barry Weiss. So this is a graph from CBS News. They went through the convictions, not the arrests from last year. 39.8% were arrested for civil immigration violations only. 30% for all other crimes. Anybody with a history of assault, 10.9%. Well, they're getting the worst of the worst. According to the secret memo, homicide, 0.05% of the immigrants arrested have either been charged or are wanted for homicide. Not convicted of homicide, because if they were convicted of homicide, they'd be in prison. They're not on the run. So 0.5 have been charged or accused of homicide. Sexual assault, 1.4% of all the immigrants arrested last year have been accused, charged with sexual assault. If they were convicted, they'd be in prison already. Gangs, right? Tren de Aragua, right? He's rounding up the gangs. Only 2% of the people arrested have gang affiliations. And how many are Tren de Aragua? 0.3% are with Tren de Aragua that they've arrested. 98.1% of the people arrested have gang affiliation. And you know how they determine gang affiliations? Chicago Bulls tattoos. Remember Rego Garcia? They kept saying he had gang affiliations because of a hat he wore. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you for listening to me. Please share these episodes. Hit the notification bell so you know when I'm doing my show. I keep irregular hours because this is a one-man show and I have to do all the research by myself. So I won't, do it until I double-checked everything. If I got anything wrong, please leave a comment. I read all your comments, and when I make mistakes, I issue corrections. Subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when the shows are up. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. Subscribe to my newsletter. This is, we did it earlier today. We'll see ideally, this would be the best time to do the show. If my mental health was okay and I was sleeping, getting up early. If I could do the show right around this time, it would be better, but I have trouble sleeping. So thank you for listening.